You ever heard of someone getting denied a seat they technically own? Well, buckle up, because this one's about to mess with your head. Picture this. A flight taking off with all the usual buzz, flight attendants prepping, passengers settling in. But there's one woman standing still, confused, frustrated, being politely but firmly told, "Sorry, ma'am, that seat's not for you." Now here's the kicker. She's not just any woman. She's the mother of Big Shaq, a man who doesn't just fly first class. He owns the Airline. Yeah, you heard that right. Her own son's airline, and still, she's being blocked from a premium seat like a regular passenger. Doesn't add up, does it? And I know, right now, your brain is racing with questions. Is there some kind of security mess-up? A staff misunderstanding? Or is there something bigger going on behind the scenes? Now listen, this story isn't just about a celebrity's mom getting treated unfairly. It taps into something deeper. Power, recognition, family loyalty, and what happens when status doesn't protect you. We've all had moments where we expected something, respect, a favor, a little leeway, because of who we are or who we're connected to, only to get hit with a cold reality check. That's what makes this story so relatable, and honestly, a little uncomfortable. But here's the thing. I'm not just telling you this to stir drama. You clicked this video to find out why this happened. Was it intentional? A hidden grudge? Or did Big Shaq himself play a role in this shocking twist? I promise you, by the end of this video, you will get the answer you came here for. No fluff. No dragging things out just to waste your time. So don't scroll, don't skip, because every detail coming up builds toward a moment you won't want to miss. And trust me, just when you think you figured it out, there's a twist that'll hit harder than you expect. Because when it comes to loyalty, status, and family, things aren't always what they seem. Keep watching, because the real story, it hasn't even started yet. It started as just another international flight, a routine day for most travelers, filled with check-ins, overpriced coffee, and a hustle through security checkpoints. But for the staff at Royal Vibes Air, it would soon turn into one of the most talked about airline incidents of the year, a moment captured by a few silent smartphone recordings, whispered about in elite circles, and debated across YouTube, Reddit threads, and trending TikToks. But before this moment exploded online, it was just a quiet storm building in Gate 12B of JFK Airport. An older woman, dressed elegantly but humbly, stood with a boarding pass in her hand, confused as two crew members politely kept redirecting her away from seat 1A. She wasn't yelling, wasn't causing a scene. She just looked stunned, like something deep inside her had just cracked. Because 1A wasn't just any seat. It was her seat. At least, that's what her son had promised her. A seat that was hers any time she flew. And her son wasn't just anybody. He was Big Shaq, the hip-hop mogul-turned-billionaire businessman, the face behind half a dozen chart-topping hits, a fashion empire, and yes, the private owner of Royal Vibes Air. To understand the shock of that moment, you've got to understand the woman herself. Known to most simply as Mama V, she was one of those rare people who move with quiet power. She wasn't flashy, didn't care about clout or cameras, and didn't flex her son's fame for perks or favors. People who knew her said she was the reason Big Shaq stayed grounded, despite the insane level of success he'd found. And anyone close to the industry knew Shaq adored his mom. Every interview he gave, every award show he attended, her name would come up. "She gave up everything to raise me," he once said on the Breakfast Club, wiping away tears. "There's nothing I own that she doesn't," which made this denial, her being stopped from sitting in a seat on a plane he owned, all the more bizarre. It wasn't just a slip-up. It was a statement. And no one could figure out why. Of course, the internet went wild once a clip surfaced of the encounter. The algorithm ate it up. Big Shaq's mom snubbed by airline staff? Videos flooded YouTube. Comment sections blew up. TikTok creators posted dramatic reenactments. And reaction videos pushed the mystery deeper into trending territory. People were split. Some said it was racism. Others whispered about a possible family feud. And then there were those who believed something even darker was at play, a power move made from the inside. A quiet coup, maybe even orchestrated by Big Shaq himself. But why? Why would he ever allow his own mother to be embarrassed like that, especially in public? That's when the deeper layers of the story started surfacing, and the trail didn't begin in that airport. It went back months, maybe even years. Back to a time when Shaq's empire was growing faster than anyone could manage. When partnerships were forming too quickly, when people were brought in just for their connections, not their character. And it turns out, Royal Vibes Air wasn't just a flex. It was a strategic move, part business, part legacy play. Shaq wanted to be a symbol of success, yes, but also something personal. Every detail had his touch. The gold-accented seatbelts, the vegan menu curated by his favorite chef. Even the scent pumped into the cabin was custom designed by his mom herself. That's what made the moment in Gate 12B feel like such a betrayal. This wasn't just a policy mistake. It felt like a deeper cut, and as the story unfolded, it became clear this wasn't an isolated moment. Insiders began leaking details to gossip blogs and independent creators. Staff from Royal Vibes Air started talking. One flight attendant, under the name Sky Sasha, posted a cryptic TikTok saying, "Not all seats are as safe as they seem. Some carry secrets." That post alone racked up over 3 million views. Another former executive claimed the company had been under internal review after a string of financial irregularities were found in premium class booking data. Rumors began to circulate that a silent investor had recently gained control over certain operational decisions. Someone who didn't share the same values as Shaq or Mama V. Someone who might have had a personal vendetta. But what made it more twisted was the theory that Mama V wasn't just collateral damage. She might have been targeted. As strange details kept leaking, people began wondering if the denial was just the tip of a much bigger scandal. A few YouTube creators started doing deeper dives, tracing flight logs, mapping out staffing shifts, even identifying a pattern in seat blocks across certain cities. Los Angeles, London, Lagos. Each route had one common factor. Mama V had flown them, and something odd had happened each time. Luggage lost, seats downgraded, boarding passes reissued minutes before departure. And still, Big Shaq hadn't commented publicly. His silence only added fuel to the fire. Fans grew impatient. Others grew suspicious. If there was nothing wrong, why not speak out? And if there was something wrong, how deep did it go? And then, days after the initial video dropped, something even more unsettling happened. A second clip emerged. This one never went viral, but it sent shockwaves through those paying close attention. A shaky, low-light video taken from inside the first-class cabin, moments after Mama V was escorted away. The camera caught a man, middle-aged, well-dressed, slipping into seat 1A. Not a random traveler. Not a last-minute upgrade, but someone with security detail. Someone who looked familiar. People online started connecting dots fast. Some believed he was a top shareholder in the airline. Others claimed he was linked to a controversial business figure with a known grudge against Big Shaq. Whoever he was, his presence in that seat changed everything, because that meant Mama V wasn't denied for a stranger. She was replaced. And that right there is where the story twists and where it really begins. Because the question now isn't just why was she denied. It's who wanted her out of that seat, and what would they try to stop her from seeing? As the second video, the one from inside the first-class cabin, spread like wildfire, the air around this mystery became thick with speculation. Viewers weren't just watching out of curiosity anymore. They were invested. Every new piece of evidence seemed to pull them deeper into the web, making them feel like part of something bigger. And that's exactly what was happening. This story wasn't just about a seat being denied. No, it was about power, money, secrets, and loyalty being tested at the highest levels. The deeper the investigation went, the more unsettling the discoveries became. Months had passed since that viral moment at the airport, and the story had only grown in intensity. Mama V, the woman who had always lived her life out of the spotlight, had found herself thrust into the heart of a scandal. The internet was relentless. Forums debated her every move, and the question on everyone's lips was, why wasn't Big Shaq defending his mother? And then there were whispers, quiet ones at first, like the rustling of leaves in a storm, that Shaq himself might have known more than he let on. A few brave souls who had once worked closely with him started hinting at things from his past that didn't quite align with the public persona he'd so carefully crafted. According to some, Big Shaq was a man of many faces, an entrepreneur on the surface, but someone much more ruthless underneath. The media had always framed him as a humble rapper who made it big, the kind of guy you expect to help his mom anytime she needed. But what if there were deeper forces at play here? What if this wasn't just about a seat? The more people dug into Royal Vibes Air's finances, the more strange anomalies appeared, things that didn't make sense. For one, Mama V's name, despite being synonymous with the airline's founding narrative, was strangely absent from any boardroom decisions. That's right, her name wasn't on the list of shareholders. She wasn't even listed as a top advisor, despite her involvement in the airline's early days. In fact, it looked as though someone had made a calculated move to marginalize her influence. The deeper the search went, the more they discovered about the unseen hand pulling the strings behind the scenes. Someone who had quietly taken control of the airline from the inside out. But who and why? One of the biggest bombshells came when a former pilot for Royal Vibes Air, a man who had spent years flying under the company's banner, spoke out on a podcast. His name was Greg Sky King Johnson, and his words sent shockwaves across the internet. I don't know if it was Shaq's decision or if he even knew, but I can tell you this. Things were changing around here. Royal Vibes wasn't just a fun little airline anymore. It became business. The kind of business that's willing to sacrifice anyone for the right deal. Greg's testimony was filled with unsettling revelations about shady investors who had quietly started taking over Royal Vibes Air, chipping away at its core values and pushing Mama V aside. But what Greg didn't know was that he was only scratching the surface of a much darker truth. And then came the game changer, the twist that no one saw coming. It came in the form of an encrypted email sent to a few trusted insiders, including a journalist named Claire Mitchell who had been relentlessly digging into the airline's financials. Claire's investigation into Royal Vibes Air had uncovered a disturbing trend. Accounts with missing funds, investments that didn't quite add up, and even more questionable connections. The email, which was anonymous but eerily precise, claimed that Big Shaq had been under control of someone much more powerful than him for years. Someone who had been pulling the strings from the shadows, not just within the airline, but within the very structure of Shaq's wealth. According to the email, Shaq was caught in a web of high-stakes investments and corporate backdoor deals that he could no longer escape. And in the middle of it all, his mother, Mama V, was caught between a rock and a hard place. The email led Claire down a rabbit hole of corporate espionage, family betrayal, and a hidden alliance between powerful business figures who had manipulated Shaq's rise to the top. The true ownership of Royal Vibes Air was far murkier than anyone had imagined. And the real kicker? Mama V had known about it all along. She had seen the signs, watched as her son's company grew into something beyond his control. She had tried to warn him, tried to tell him that the people around him weren't the loyal partners he thought they were. But Big Shaq, in his drive to build his empire, had pushed her away, ignoring her counsel as he surrounded himself with the wrong people. Now, as the investigation grew more complex, it became clear that the seat Mama V had been denied wasn't just about her flying in comfort. It was about her position within the company, her legacy, and her role in what was quickly turning into a full-blown corporate war. And at the heart of it all, Mama V was torn between loyalty to her son and a growing suspicion that Shaq had been manipulated by forces far beyond his control. In the middle of this storm, something else began to unravel. A secret project within Royal Vibes Air that no one had been talking about. It wasn't just an airline anymore. It was an investment hub. The airline had become a front for something much larger, something more secretive and dangerous. In fact, Claire's sources began to whisper about a new venture, a series of clandestine partnerships with government agencies, high-profile tech moguls, and overseas investors with shady reputations. The stakes were getting higher, and Mama V's place in the middle of this web was no longer just about pride. It was a matter of survival. With every passing day, the pressure mounted. The truth was slipping further away from the public eye, and the stakes were becoming personal. This wasn't just about a fight for control over an airline. It was about something much more profound. And the only person who might have the answers was Mama V. But what had she truly known all along? Was she part of the plan, or had she been manipulated by the very forces she had trusted? And if she was caught in the crossfire, Would Shaq ever step in and protect her? Or had he already been lost to the world of high-stakes business? As the tension continued to rise, viewers were left with one undeniable truth. This was no longer just a family dispute. This was a war over loyalty, money, and control. And the true conflict had only just begun as the chaos surrounding Royal Vibe's Air reached its peak. The lines between loyalty, betrayal, and power were starting to blur. The internet buzzed with speculation. The media couldn't stop covering the growing scandal, and the walls seemed to close in on Shaq and Mama V. But the more the public dug, the more it seemed like every piece of evidence, every leak, was just another step down a rabbit hole that led to a dead end. Who was really in control? Was it Shaq, who had always been the face of the company? Or was it someone much more sinister pulling the strings behind the scenes? And, most importantly, what did Mama V know about it all? But nothing could prepare the world for what was about to come to light. As Claire Mitchell, the investigative journalist, delved deeper into the world of Royal Vibe's Air, the missing puzzle pieces began to click into place. She uncovered records showing that, behind the scenes, the airline had been used as a front for money laundering and illegal investments, facilitated by a powerful group of international investors who had used Shaq's name as their ticket to legitimizing their operation. This wasn't just about an airline. This was a high-stakes game where the lives of countless people, including Shaq's, were at risk, and the truth was finally beginning to make sense. But the biggest revelation came when Claire uncovered a long-forgotten piece of company history, an encrypted set of emails between Shaq and a mysterious individual known only as Eagle Eye. These messages, dating back over a year, revealed a chilling plan. Shaq had been slowly but surely maneuvered into debt through a series of bad investments, while this unknown group quietly tightened their grip on the company. Shaq had unknowingly agreed to terms that put his legacy and his mother's at risk. The email trail also revealed that Eagle Eye was someone close to Shaq, someone he trusted implicitly. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about betrayal at the deepest level. With every passing day, the pressure on Shaq grew unbearable. His fans, his friends, his colleagues. Everyone had been waiting for him to speak out, but he stayed silent. Why? Because he couldn't. Because the truth, as painful as it was, would destroy everything he had worked for. And the more Claire dug, the clearer it became. Shaq had known something was off, but he hadn't realized how deep the corruption ran. He'd been blinded by his own ambition, seduced by the promise of more success, more power, more everything. But now, as the truth began to leak out, the cost of his ambition was finally catching up with him. The pressure reached a boiling point when Claire, in one final twist, discovered the identity of Eagle Eye. It wasn't just some distant business partner or investor. It was someone Shaq had always trusted, someone who had been by his side for years, someone whose loyalty was unquestioned. It was his own brother, the one person who, more than anyone, knew the vulnerabilities of Shaq's empire, the one person who could exploit those weaknesses for their own gain, the same brother who had never been in the public eye, the one who had operated quietly in the background, pulling strings, making deals, and manipulating Shaq's decisions from the shadows. This revelation hit hard, not just for Shaq, but for Mama V, because now it wasn't just about a corporate betrayal. It was a family betrayal. Shaq's brother had used his knowledge of their family's history, their business, and their trust in each other to orchestrate a takeover. And Mama V had been a pawn in that game all along. The final confrontation came in an unexpected place. Shaq and Mama V were meeting with a lawyer in a small conference room, preparing to discuss their options after the full scope of the scandal was revealed. They had finally come together, ready to fight back. But as Shaq looked at the papers, something inside him cracked. He knew what had to happen. His brother, his own flesh and blood, had turned against him for the sake of power and wealth. And in that moment, Shaq made the hardest decision of his life. He had to confront his brother, to finally end the game that had been played at the expense of his family's trust. In a dramatic turn of events, Shaq confronted his brother in a private meeting. The tension was palpable, each word a carefully calculated strike. Shaq demanded the truth. His brother, who had always been cool under pressure, finally cracked. The betrayal was out in the open, and there was no turning back. The fight wasn't just for control of an airline. It was for the soul of their family. And in the end, Shaq's brother was forced to step down, his influence over royal vibes air obliterated. But the victory wasn't as sweet as Shaq had hoped, because in the aftermath, Mama V finally revealed the painful truth that she had been hiding for so long. She had known about her son's brother's intentions all along. Mama V had seen the manipulation, the greed, the slow erosion of her son's spirit, and she had tried to warn him. But Shaq, ever the optimist, had refused to listen. He had been too focused on his dream, too consumed by the idea of expanding his empire, to see the danger lurking in his own family. And that, perhaps, was the most painful lesson of all. The truth about loyalty, about ambition, and about the cost of forgetting the people who mattered most. Shaq had lost sight of what truly mattered, his family, his legacy, and the values that had made him who he was. But now, as the dust settled and the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, he had a chance to rebuild, not just his company, but his relationship with his mother, with the people who had been there for him when it all began. The story ended with a quiet moment between mother and son. In the aftermath of the storm, they sat together, watching the sunrise, both knowing that the road ahead would be long, but it would be theirs to walk, together. Shaq had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true success wasn't about the power you wield, but about the people you choose to stand beside. And so, as the final credits rolled on this wild journey, the audience was left with a sense of hope, not just for Shaq and his mother, but for all of us. A reminder that even when the world feels like it's falling apart, the strength of family, the power of loyalty, and the courage to face the truth will always guide us home. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.